Hello and welcome. I'm Rawia Alami and this is the Dailies, where we take a look at important news stories, reports, analyses and articles published in newspapers and media outlets across the world. Today's episode will focus on the perspectives of authors and officials who share diverse views on the attack in Doha, from Qatar, the US, and finally from Israel. Let's start today with a cartoon published in the opinion section of the Qatari newspaper Gulf Times, which perhaps encompasses the scenes that transpired yesterday in the Qatari capital, Doha, at least from Qatar's perspective. As you can see, the cartoon shows a round negotiating table blasted open at the center with black smoke billowing upward. Empty chairs and scattered microphones appear also in the drawing, with a title, "The Loudest Silence." The imagery speaks directly to Israel's strike on Hamas negotiators in Doha. Instead of progress in talks, the blast leaves a void, negotiations silenced, diplomacy shattered. Overall, the cartoon critiques how military action has replaced dialogue, underscoring the futility of peace efforts when negotiators themselves become targets. It portrays the strike not just as an attack on Hamas, but on the possibility of negotiations itself. As expected, all Qatari newspapers carried the news of Israel targeting a residential area where several members of the political bureau of Hamas were convening to discuss the latest American proposal for a hostage deal and the end of the war in Gaza. Al Arab's editorial called the attack reckless and unprecedented on Qatari sovereignty, designed to intimidate and disrupt Qatar's mediation role in Gaza. It also stresses that the assault was not just military, but deeply political, a message that no Arab state should pursue an independent peace effort. The piece also conveys Qatar's firm response, with Emir Sheikh Tamim vowing to defend the nation's sovereignty and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed warning that Doha reserves the right to respond. The editorial portrays Israel as increasingly aggressive and isolated, while Qatar emerges as a resilient actor backed by rare Arab, Islamic, and international unity. At its heart, the piece warns that unchecked Israeli actions risk dragging the entire region into a wider chaos. Soon after the Israeli attack, conflicting reports started circulating regarding whether the US had prior knowledge of the Israeli airstrike on Doha and how long before were they notified, if they were, before they informed the state of Qatar. The White House official statement confirms that they learned of Israel's Doha strike plan from the US military only hours before, and President Trump ordered Qatar to be warned, but the message arrived too late to prevent the attack. On the Qatari side, the advisor to the Prime Minister and official spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs took to X to refute claims that the state of Qatar was notified in advance. Dr. Majid bin Mohammed al-Ansari said in a post on X that these circulated statements were false. The call received from an American official came during the sound of explosions resulting from the Israeli attack in Doha, as he said. American newspapers, on the other hand, covered the Israeli strike in Doha, with many highlighting that the US had no prior knowledge, while many covered what is considered a rare rebuke from President Trump to Israel, as the move undermines US peace efforts. Many newspapers also highlighted President Trump's continued backing of Israel's goal of eliminating Hamas. In general, analysts quoted in many publications argue that Trump's mixed signals have encouraged Israel's unilateral actions. The New York Times published an analysis of the Israeli strike titled, "Once Again, Israel leaves Trump in the dark as it conducts a military attack." The piece also highlights the recurring pattern of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu blindsiding President Trump with military strikes, this time in Qatar. The analysis shows how Netanyahu has repeatedly leveraged his close ties with Trump to act unilaterally, confident that any U.S. anger will fade without real consequences. Trump admitted he was very unhappy about being left out of the loop, especially as the Doha strike undercut his own ceasefire proposal. Yet, as experts note, Trump's lack of firm red lines has effectively given Netanyahu free rein to pursue his goals. The analysis frames the episode as another chapter in Netanyahu's push to appear strong, even at the cost of straining his most important alliance. Opinion articles also commented on the attack, with some considering it detrimental for Israel. David Ignatius wrote in the Washington Post, arguing that Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar was a grave miscalculation that may have narrowed rather than expanded Israel's options in the Gaza war. The attack, which killed a Hamas official's son, bodyguards, and a Qatari officer, but missed senior leaders, also destroyed Qatar's role as a key mediator in US-backed peace efforts. Ignatius also notes that Qatar has been promised protection, making the strike a shock that undercut one of the few viable negotiation channels. The article also concludes that now, with the diplomatic track weakened and Egypt's mediation in doubt, Israel risks being left with only the prospect of a military reoccupation of Gaza, an outcome even Israeli officials are reluctant to pursue. The Wall Street Journal provided additional details of Israel's audacious strike on Hamas leaders in Doha. The report highlights how Israel had prepared for months, refining long-range tactics through operations in Yemen, Iran, and beyond to target Hamas figures abroad after killing most of its Gaza commanders. In the weeks leading up to the attack, Egyptian and Turkish officials privately warned Hamas to tighten security, signaling regional unease. The report highlights that despite these alerts, Hamas leaders gathered in Doha to discuss a U.S. ceasefire plan, giving Israel its opening. Deploying more than 10 jets with long-range missiles, Israel struck deep into Qatari territory, underscoring Netanyahu's willingness to ignore traditional red lines, even at the risk of diplomatic fallout with Washington. Moving on to Israel, while many Israeli newspapers framed the attack as simply the carrying out of Israel's right to target Hamas leaders wherever they may be, regardless of the consequences, Haaretz had a slightly different analogy. The left-wing Israeli newspaper, in its reporting of the Doha strikes, argues that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is using the Doha strike to shape his image as a leader who delivers victories. The report explains that Israel's attack on Hamas leaders in Qatar followed deadly assaults in Jerusalem and Gaza, but also reflects a strategy long discussed since October 7th. By pushing the operation now, Netanyahu hopes to show strength and determination, even if it complicates hostage talks or ceasefire efforts. The piece suggests his real goal is less about immediate military gain and more about creating a powerful image at home and abroad. For Netanyahu, the Doha strike is not only about defeating Hamas, it's about proving himself as Israel's victorious leader. On the other hand, Yediot Ahronot claims in one of its reports that the objective of the strike is to shatter diplomatic roadblocks and reclaim leverage in hostage talks, highlighting no sanctuary for terror groups' leaders. The report reveals how Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Doha was as much about politics as it was about security. The attack, ordered by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz, followed deadly assaults in Jerusalem and Gaza. Officials explained that Hamas's overseas leadership had become an obstacle to a US-backed ceasefire deal, blocking progress on hostage negotiations. The piece highlights that by hitting Doha, Israel signaled that Hamas leaders would find no safe haven even in Qatar. But the move also carried risks, as the report explains. Talks were suspended. Qatar accused Israel of undermining peace, and Hamas denounced the strike as a violation of sovereignty. Ultimately, the piece frames Netanyahu's action as a calculated show of strength to reclaim leverage and project victory. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.